Have you ever wanted someone so badly it physically hurt? Not in a poetic, romantic way. I mean a genuine physical ache in your chest, a thrumming under your skin that makes it impossible to concentrate. It was a low-grade fever I couldn't sweat out, a constant hum of electricity I couldn't ground. Her name was Willow, and she was going to be the end of me. It started, as most of my problems did, with me being a mess. I had a final paper on the socio-political implications of post-war Italian cinema that was threatening to swallow me whole. I'd been fueled by nothing but lukewarm coffee and panic for 48 hours straight. My immune system, predictably, waved a tiny white flag and surrendered completely. I woke up with a throat full of gravel and a head full of cotton. There was no way I was making it to my opening shift at the daily grind. I fumbled for my phone, my thumb hovering over the group chat we used for shift coverage. It was a digital piranha tank, a flurry of "can't sorry" and "have plans" that appeared within seconds of any request. I hated it. I hated asking for help, hated the vulnerability of it. So I did what I'd started doing a few months ago. I bypassed the group chat entirely and texted Willow directly. Me. Hey, I know it's super last minute, but I woke up feeling like death. Any chance you could cover my 6 a.m., 1 p.m. today? I'll owe you my firstborn. I tossed the phone onto my pillow and squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable rejection. Willow was already scheduled for the closing shift. Taking my opening shift would mean working a brutal 16-hour day. A split double, the absolute worst kind of shift. No one in their right mind would do it. My phone buzzed less than a minute later. Willow. Got it. Feel better, Phoenix, just that. No complaints, no bargaining for my firstborn, no guilt trip, just got it. A wave of relief so profound it almost made me dizzy washed over me. I murmured a thank you to the universe and burrowed back under my covers, letting sleep pull me under. It wasn't until 2 days later, when I was finally feeling human again and scrolling through my texts to delete old messages, that the pattern hit me. It was like one of those magic eye pictures. I'd been staring at it for months, but suddenly the image snapped into focus. February 12th. I'd texted Willow to cover a shift so I could go to a concert. Willow. Got it. Have fun. March 3rd. My car broke down. Willow. Got it. Don't worry about it. March 21st. A surprise visit from my parents. Willow. Got it. Enjoy the time with them. April 4th. A migraine that had me seeing spots. Willow. Got it. Take care of yourself. And now, today. Every single time I'd called out in the last 6 months, I had texted her directly, and every single time she had covered for me without a moment's hesitation. It didn't matter if she had plans, if she was already working, if it was a holiday. The answer was always the same. A strange heat bloomed in my chest, entirely unrelated to my fading fever. Why? Why would she do that? We were friendly, sure. We worked well together, but we weren't friends. Not really. We didn't hang out after work. We didn't talk about our lives outside the scent of burnt espresso and steamed milk. But I knew her. I knew the way her dark hair curled just behind her ears when it was humid. I knew the exact shade of green in her eyes, like moss after it rains. I knew the way the muscles in her forearms flexed when she tamped down a puck of espresso, a small, precise movement that was mesmerizing to watch. I knew the constellation of tiny moles on her neck that I'd sometimes catch a glimpse of when she tied her apron. My stomach did a slow, nervous flip. I knew I had to go thank her. Properly. Not with a text, but in person. The thought sent a fresh jolt of electricity through me, and this time it had nothing to do with being sick. This was something else entirely. Something I had been pointedly ignoring for a very, very long time. I was going to see Willow, and I was terrified. The bell above the door of the daily grind chimed, announcing my arrival. The familiar scent of coffee beans and baked sugar wrapped around me like a warm blanket. But there was no comfort in it today. My nerves were stretched as taut as a guitar string. Willow was behind the counter, her back to me. She was wiping down the stainless steel surface of the espresso machine, her movements efficient and graceful. She wore a simple black t-shirt that clung to her shoulders, the sleeves rolled up to her biceps, revealing the strong, capable arms I had been thinking about far too much. She turned, a clean rag in her hand, and her eyes found mine across the small cafe. A slow smile spread across her face. It was the kind of smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. "Look what the cat dragged in," she said, her voice a low, pleasant rumble that I felt in my bones. "Feeling better?" "Yeah." "Much," I managed, my own voice sounding thin and reedy. I walked up to the counter, my palms suddenly slick with sweat. I clutched the small paper bag in my hand like a lifeline. I came to thank you for covering for me. Again." Her smile softened. She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms over her chest. The movement pulled the fabric of her shirt taut, and I forced my eyes back up to her face. "It's no problem, Phoenix. You know that." "No, it is a problem. You worked a 16-hour day because I was sick. That's not a small favor, Willow." I pushed the small bag across the counter towards her. "This is for you. It's not much, but—" She looked at the bag, then back at me, a curious glint in her green eyes. She reached out and took it, her fingers brushing against mine for a fraction of a second. A jolt, sharp and startling, shot up my arm. Everything stopped. The whir of the grinders, the quiet chatter of the other customers, the hiss of the steam wand. It all faded into a dull background hum. All I could feel was the ghost of her touch on my skin. All I could see was the way her pupils had darkened just for a second. Did she feel it too? She opened the bag and pulled out the small, lumpy object I'd bought from the bakery next door. It was a scone, shaped vaguely like a rock, studded with what the baker had assured me were artisanal blueberries. Willow looked at the scone, then back at me, and a genuine, unrestrained laugh escaped her lips. It was a wonderful sound, rich and warm. "A scone?" My face flushed with heat. "It's a thank you scone." "A thank you scone," she repeated, her eyes crinkling at the corners. She broke off a piece and popped it into her mouth. She chewed thoughtfully. "It's very dense." "I know," I mumbled, wishing the floor would open up and swallow me. "It's the thought that counts." "It is," she agreed, her expression turning serious again. She set the scone down on the counter. "But you don't have to thank me, Phoenix." Here it was, the moment of truth. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. "But I do! Willow, why do you always do it? Why do you always say yes when I ask you to cover? No one else does." She held my gaze, her own unwavering. The playful light in her eyes was gone, replaced by an intensity that made it hard to breathe. The space between us crackled. It felt charged. Dangerous. "Honestly?" she asked, her voice dropping lower, forcing me to lean in slightly to hear her over the sudden roar of the blender. "Honestly," I whispered back. She took a small step closer to the counter, her voice a soft confession meant only for me. "Because getting a text from you is the highlight of my day." My brain stuttered to a halt. The words didn't compute. Highlight of her day? My pathetic pleading texts for shift coverage. "What?" I breathed. "It's the only time you ever text me first," she explained, her gaze so direct it felt like a physical touch. "It's the only time I know for sure that you're thinking of me, even if it's just because you need something." Oh. The floor beneath my feet seemed to tilt. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. This wasn't about being a good coworker. This wasn't about favors or scones or 16-hour shifts. This was about the same low-grade fever I'd been running, the same constant hum of electricity. She had it too. Suddenly, a deafening crack of thunder shook the entire building, rattling the large windows in their frames. The lights flickered once, twice, and then plunged the cafe into a dim, murky twilight as the power grid gave up. A collective gasp went through the few remaining customers. Outside, the sky opened up. Rain began to hammer against the glass, a torrential, violent downpour that obscured the street in a sheet of gray. Willow didn't even flinch. She just kept looking at me, her expression unreadable in the gloom. "Well," she said, her voice a calm island in the sudden chaos. "Looks like you're stuck here for a while." Stuck. With her. The word echoed in the sudden, suffocating quiet of the room. My heart rate kicked up another notch. My carefully constructed composure was crumbling brick by brick. The other barista, a perpetually stressed teenager named Leo, started fumbling with the emergency lights. A few customers grumbled, packing up their laptops and heading for the door, only to be met with the wall of water outside. They retreated, looking disgruntled. Willow, however, remained perfectly still. Her focus was entirely on me. It was unnerving. It was thrilling. I should probably go, I said, my voice betraying my panic. It was a lie. The last thing I wanted to do was leave. But staying felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind begging me to jump. In that? She asked, gesturing with her head toward the window, where the rain was coming down in near solid curtains. You'll be soaked in seconds. She was right. My apartment was a 15-minute walk away. I didn't have a car or even an umbrella. We can wait it out in the back, she offered. Her tone was casual, but her eyes held a different message, a challenge. Leo can handle the handful of stragglers out here. We have candles in the office. The back room, the small, cramped office space, and the even smaller stock room. The air suddenly felt thick, heavy with unspoken possibilities. My mind flashed with images of us, trapped in the dark, surrounded by the scent of coffee beans and rain. My body made the decision for my brain. I gave a small, jerky nod. Okay. The single word hung in the air between us, sealing my fate. Willow's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. Okay, she repeated softly. She lifted the hinged section of the counter. After you. Walking behind the counter felt like crossing a forbidden boundary. It was her space, her domain. The air was warmer back here, thick with the heat radiating from the machines. I was acutely aware of her presence behind me, the subtle shift of air as she moved. I could feel the warmth of her body even though we weren't touching. She led me past the industrial-sized refrigerators and into the narrow hallway that led to the stockroom and the manager's office. It was darker here, the only light filtering in from the front of the shop. Office is this way, she said, her voice close to my ear. A shiver traced its way down my spine. She pushed open a door and flicked a useless light switch out of habit. The office was tiny, barely big enough for a small metal desk, a wheezing computer monitor, and two mismatched chairs. A single small window looked out onto the back alley where rain was gushing from a drain pipe. Willow moved past me, her arm brushing against mine. This time the touch was less of a jolt and more of a slow spreading warmth, like swallowing whiskey. She rummaged in a desk drawer and pulled out a box of emergency candles and a lighter. She placed two thick waxy candles on the desk and lit them. The small flames flickered to life, casting dancing shadows on the walls and bathing her face in a soft golden glow. The green in her eyes seemed to deepen, to smolder. There, she said, her voice a low murmur. Atmosphere. I let out a shaky laugh. Very romantic. The words were out before I could stop them. My face burned. Willow's smile didn't falter. If anything, it widened. Is that what you think this is? My throat went dry. I couldn't form a response. I just stood there, mesmerized by the way the candlelight caught the curve of her lips. She took a step closer. The tiny office suddenly felt impossibly small. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to retreat, not that I wanted to. Phoenix, she said, and the way she said my name was a caress. It was soft and intimate, and it made my knees feel weak. Willow, I whispered back, my voice barely audible. She was so close now. I could smell the faint, clean scent of her soap mixed with the earthy aroma of coffee. I could see the rapid, tiny flutter of the pulse in her throat. Her own heart was racing. The realization gave me a surge of courage. I wasn't the only one on the cliff edge. She reached out, not to touch me, but to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear. Her fingers grazed my temple, my cheekbone, my jawline. Her touch was feather-light, but it left a trail of fire in its wake. My skin tingled, every nerve ending awake and screaming for more. I leaned into her touch instinctively, my eyes fluttering shut. My breath hitched. You have no idea, she murmured, her voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Longing. You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that. My eyes snapped open. Her face was inches from mine. Her gaze dropped to my lips, and the air crackled with a tension so potent it was almost a physical thing. This was it. The moment stretched, thrumming with silent energy. The world narrowed to this tiny room, the sound of the rain, the smell of her skin, the heat of her body. She started to lean in. I could feel her breath on my lips, warm and sweet. My own lips parted in anticipation. My entire body was a coiled spring of want. And then, the door creaked open. "Hey, Willow!" Leo's voice sliced through the charged silence. "The power's back on." The overhead fluorescent light flickered on with a harsh buzzing sound, flooding the room with cold, unforgiving light. The spell was broken. Willow jerked back as if she'd been burned, her hand dropping from my face. She took a half step away, putting a universe of distance between us. The heat, the intimacy, the promise. It all vanished in the sterile glare of the office light. I stood there, trembling, my heart a painful, frantic drum against my ribs. My lips felt cold, empty. The sense of loss was so acute it felt like a physical blow. "Thanks, Leo," Willow said, her voice strained, tight. She wouldn't look at me. She was staring at the wall, her jaw clenched. "I'll be right out." Leo, oblivious, just nodded. "Okay." Oh, and the rain stopped. He disappeared, pulling the door closed behind him. The rain stopped. The power was back. There was no reason for me to be here anymore. No reason for us to be trapped in this tiny room together. The silence that fell was heavy and awkward. The beautiful tension had curdled into something uncomfortable. I felt exposed, raw. I had to say something. I had to do something. "I should go," I said again. And this time, the words were filled with a genuine, aching disappointment. I couldn't look at her either. I stared at my own feet, at the scuffed toes of my sneakers. "Yeah," she said, her voice flat. This couldn't be how it ended, with this sterile, buzzing silence and the ghost of a kiss hanging between us. I took a breath, gathering the shredded remnants of my courage. I lifted my head and forced myself to meet her eyes. She was still looking away, but I could see the tension in the line of her shoulders, the tight set of her jaw. She was shutting me out. "Willow," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "Don't!" Her head snapped toward me, her green eyes wide with surprise. "Don't what?" "Don't do that," I said, taking a step toward her, closing the distance she'd created. "Don't shut down. Don't pretend that didn't just happen." A muscle feathered in her jaw. "Phoenix?" "No," I interrupted, bolder now. The fear was still there. A cold knot in my stomach, but the desire was stronger. The need to know, the need to feel her lips on mine was an all-consuming fire. "Look at me." She did, and in her eyes, I saw it all. The same desperate wanting that was clawing its way up my own throat. The same fear, the same vulnerability she hid so well behind her confident smile and easy grace. She wasn't the confident seducer in this moment. She was just as terrified as I was. And that, more than anything, gave me the strength to close the remaining space between us. I reached up, my hand trembling, and cupped her jaw. Her skin was warm, smooth. A slight tremor ran through her as I touched her. I mirrored the gesture she had made just moments before, my thumb stroking the line of her cheekbone. "It's the only time you text me first," I repeated her words. My voice a whisper. "Willow, I would have texted you for anything. I would have made up a million stupid excuses just to have a reason to talk to you." A shaky breath escaped her lips. Her eyes, dark and stormy, searched mine. "I watch you all day," I confessed, the words tumbling out of me in a rush. "I watch the way you move. I watch your hands. I think about what it would feel like if you touched me." My voice broke on the last word. "I've been going out of my mind." Her hands came up to rest on my waist, her grip hesitant at first, then firm, possessive. She pulled me closer until our bodies were flush against each other. I could feel the solid warmth of her, the frantic beat of her heart matching my own. Phoenix? She breathed, her forehead resting against mine. Her eyes were closed. You're going to kill me. Good, I whispered, my lips brushing against hers as I spoke. Then we'll be even. And then I closed the final, agonizing millimeter between us and kissed her. It wasn't a tentative, exploratory kiss. There was no time for that. This was a kiss born of months of unspoken longing, of stolen glances across a crowded cafe, of a tension that had finally blessedly snapped. Her lips were even softer than I had imagined, but the kiss itself was firm, demanding. It was a kiss that said, finally. A small, desperate sound escaped my throat, and I pressed myself closer, my hands tangling in the soft hair at the nape of her neck. Her hands tightened on my waist, pulling me so close I felt I might merge into her. The sterile office, the buzzing light, the world outside, it all disappeared. There was only this, only her. She tasted of coffee and rain and something that was uniquely, intoxicatingly willow. It was a taste I knew I would never get enough of. The kiss was a conversation we'd been needing to have for months. It spoke of frustration and yearning, of fear and a deep, resonant wanting that shook me to my core. Her mouth moved against mine with a certainty that left me breathless, her tongue tracing the seam of my lips, asking a question I answered without hesitation. I opened to her, and the kiss deepened, turning from frantic to hungry. It was a deluge after a long drought. My fingers tightened in her hair, pulling her impossibly closer. One of her hands slid from my waist up my back, her palm flat between my shoulder blades, holding me to her as if she was afraid I might disappear. I felt a tremor run through her body, or maybe it was mine. I couldn't tell where she ended, and I began. We were a tangle of limbs and breathless sighs, and the soft, wet sound of our mouths moving together. When we finally broke apart, we were both gasping for air, our chests heaving. I kept my forehead pressed against hers, my eyes closed, trying to commit every single sensation to memory. The feeling of her lips on mine, the solid strength of her body against me, the faint scent of her skin. Wow, I breathed, the word a puff of air against her lips. A low chuckle rumbled in her chest. Yeah, she said, her voice rough. Wow. She leaned back just enough to look at me. Her hair was a mess from my hands, her lips were red and swollen, and her eyes were dark with a desire that mirrored my own. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. So, she said, her thumb tracing a slow, lazy circle on my hip. The simple movement sent a fresh wave of heat through me. That thank you scone was a little more effective than you thought. A laugh bubbled up out of me, real and joyous. I'm starting to think I should call out sick more often. Her smile was slow, predatory. Don't you dare. From now on, you text me for no reason at all. I can do that, I promised, my voice thick. The air in the room was still charged, but the frantic energy had been replaced by a deep, humming thrum of connection. The cliff edge was gone. We had jumped, and we were flying. My shift is over in 10 minutes, she murmured, her gaze dropping to my lips again. The message was clear. The question hung in the air, unspoken but deafening. What happens now? I didn't need to think about the answer. I had been thinking about it, dreaming about it for months. Good, I said, my voice dropping to a husky whisper. My place or yours? The look in her eyes was all the answer I needed. It was a promise of everything I had been secretly, desperately craving. She didn't even answer with words. She just lowered her head and kissed me again. This kiss was different. It wasn't the desperate, frantic collision of our first. It was slower, deeper. It was a promise. Her lips moved over mine with a deliberate, languid confidence that made my knees weak all over again. She took her time, exploring, tasting, learning the shape of my mouth as if she planned to memorize it. My hand slid from her hair down her strong back, my fingers tracing the hard lines of her muscles through the thin cotton of her shirt. She shivered under my touch, a low sound vibrating in her chest. She pulled back just an inch, her breath mingling with mine. My place, she said, her voice a ragged whisper against my lips. It's closer. My heart leaped. Okay. But, she added, and a wicked glint appeared in her eyes, you're not going to last the walk. Before I could ask what she meant, she backed me up against the cold metal of a filing cabinet. The sudden contact made me gasp, and she captured the sound with her mouth, her kiss turning possessive, hungry. One of her legs pushed between mine, her thigh pressing against the heart of me, and a jolt of pure, unadulterated pleasure shot through me. My head fell back against the cabinet with a soft thud. My fingers dug into your shoulders. Willow, I gasped, her name a prayer on my lips. I've wanted this for so long, Phoenix, she murmured, her lips leaving my mouth to trail a line of fire down my jaw, to the sensitive spot just below my ear. I've imagined this, us, in this back room. You have, I choked out, my hips instinctively pushing forward against the firm pressure of her thigh. Every single day, she confessed, her teeth grazing my neck. I cried out, a soft, helpless sound. My entire body was on fire, every nerve ending singing a hymn of pure sensation. She was taking me apart with just her mouth, with the pressure of her body, with the husky timbre of her voice. She moved back to my mouth, her kiss a brand of ownership. Her hands roamed my body with a new, bold confidence, mapping the curve of my waist, the swell of my hip. I felt like I was drowning, and I had never wanted anything more. A loud knock on the door made us both freeze. Willow, you decent? I gotta clock out and get the deposit slip from the desk, Leo's voice called through the wood. Willow pulled back, breathing heavily, a string of curses under her breath. She rested her forehead against mine again, her eyes closed in frustration. I was trembling, my body thrumming with an unfulfilled ache that was almost painful. Saved by the bell, I whispered, my voice shaky. Or not, she growled, her eyes snapping open. They were blazing. Give me 5 minutes to close out. Don't move. It was a command, not a request. I'm not going anywhere, I promised. She gave me one last hard kiss, a promise of what was to come, and then she was gone, leaving me leaning against the filing cabinet, my legs shaking, my body humming with a want so powerful it scared me. The 5 minutes she was gone felt like an eternity. I could hear the muffled sounds of her and Leo closing up the shop, the clink of keys, the scrape of chairs, the final click of the front door's lock. Then silence? My heart hammered in my chest. This was real. This was happening. The office door opened, and Willow stood there, silhouetted against the dim light of the cafe. She had her jacket on, and her keys in her hand. She just looked at me for a long moment, her expression intense. Ready? She asked. I could only nod, my throat too tight for words. She held out her hand. I walked toward her, my legs still unsteady, and placed my hand in hers. Her fingers laced with mine, her grip strong and sheer. It felt right. It felt like coming home. The walk to her apartment was a blur. The streets were slick and shining from the recent downpour, the air cool and clean. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. The connection between us was a palpable thing, a current flowing through our joined hands. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building a few blocks from the cafe. The stairs creaked under our feet. The anticipation was a physical weight in my stomach, a delicious, terrifying pressure. She unlocked her door and pushed it open, pulling me inside after her. The door clicked shut behind us, plunging us into darkness. The sound of the lock sliding into place was the loudest thing I had ever heard. And then we were alone. She didn't turn on a light. In the gloom, I could just make out the shape of her as she dropped her keys on a small table. She turned to face me, and I felt her hands on my waist again. Phoenix, she whispered into the darkness. I found her mouth with my own, and we were lost. The second kiss had been a promise. The make-out session in the office had been a preview. This was the fulfillment. All the pent-up want, all the stolen glances, all the secret yearning, it all came pouring out in a flood of unrestrained passion. She backed me against the door, her body pressing me into the solid wood. My jacket was shrugged off, her hands were in my hair, my hands were under her shirt. My fingers splayed against the warm, smooth skin of her back. It was frantic and desperate and perfect. Kisses turned into a language of their own. Hungry, searching, demanding. My name on her lips, her name on mine, whispered like desperate prayers into the space between our mouths. She lifted me as if I weighed nothing, and my legs wrapped around her waist instinctively. She carried me from the entryway, through the dark apartment, her mouth never leaving mine. I had no idea where we were going. I didn't care. She laid me down on something soft. Her bed. The mattress dipped under our combined weight. She loomed over me, a dark, beautiful shadow against the faint light filtering in from the streetlights outside. "Tell me this is real," I whispered, reaching up to trace the line of her jaw. "It's real," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. She lowered her head, her lips brushing my ear. "I'm real." Her hands began a slow, deliberate exploration of my body, and my mind short-circuited. Every touch was a discovery, every caress a revelation. She undressed me with an agonizing slowness, her lips and hands worshipping every inch of skin she uncovered. She showed me what it meant to be truly wanted. She took me apart with just her touch, piece by piece, until I was nothing but sensation and need. My frustrations, my insecurities, the constant questioning, it all melted away under the heat of her hands, the devotion of her mouth. Our bodies spoke a language I'd never learned but had somehow always known. It was a language of sighs and shivers, of arched backs and tangled limbs. She mapped every inch of me with a reverence that made me tremble. In the quiet dark of her room, with the city humming a distant lullaby outside her window, we lost ourselves in each other. She showed me pleasure I didn't know existed. A depth of feeling that was so intense it bordered on pain. I came undone in her arms, my voice crying out her name in the darkness. It was a moment of complete surrender, of absolute trust. I gave her everything, and she took it, cherished it, and gave me everything of herself in return. We made love like the world was ending, and in a way it was. The world I had known before, the world of quiet yearning and unspoken desires, was gone forever. In its place was this new, vibrant reality, filled with the taste of her skin and the sound of her breathing in the dark. Later, much later, we lay tangled together in her sheets, my head on her chest, my ear pressed against her steady heartbeat. The frantic energy had subsided, leaving behind a profound, peaceful intimacy. My body was a pleasant, heavy ache, every muscle humming with contentment. I traced idle patterns on her stomach with my fingertip. The silence was comfortable, filled with the afterglow of what we'd shared. "Willow?" I whispered into the quiet. Her voice was a sleepy rumble beneath my ear. Her hand was stroking my hair, a slow, soothing motion. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it," I said, my voice soft. She was quiet for a moment. I felt her chest rise and fall with a deep breath. "There's nothing to be sorry for. I'm not exactly easy to read." I lifted my head to look at her. In the dim light, I could see the soft curve of her smile. "Aren't you? You literally told me getting my texts was the highlight of your day." She winced, a faint blush creeping up her neck. "Okay, maybe that part was a little obvious." I was having a moment. "I liked that moment, Itais," I said, leaning in to kiss her softly. "It was a very good moment." "Yeah," she murmured against my lips. "The best," I confirmed. I settled my head back down on her chest, feeling impossibly safe, impossibly content. A thought that had been nagging at the back of my mind surfaced. "Can I ask you something else?" "Anything." "That first time, months ago, the concert, you were supposed to go out with friends that night. I remember you mentioning it, but you covered for me anyway." I felt her nod. "I was." "Why?" Her hand stilled in my hair. She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. Then her voice came, low and vulnerable in the darkness. "Because the thought of you having a good night," she said softly, "was better than any night I could have had myself, because I knew you'd be happy. And all I've wanted for a long time, is for you to be happy." Tears pricked my eyes. The sincerity, the raw honesty in her voice undid me all over again. It wasn't just about physical attraction. It wasn't just about wanting. It was deeper than that. So much deeper. "Willow," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I didn't have the words to tell her what that meant to me, so I showed her instead. I pushed myself up and kissed her, a kiss filled with all the gratitude and awe and burgeoning love that was swelling in my chest. It was a kiss of profound tenderness, a silent thank you for seeing me, for wanting me, for waiting for me. She responded instantly, her arms wrapping around me, pulling me on top of her. And as we discovered each other again until dawn, it wasn't with the frantic energy of before, but with a slow, deep reverence. It was a confirmation, a celebration. This was not an ending. This was the beginning of everything. I woke to the unfamiliar feeling of sunlight on my face, and the even more unfamiliar feeling of a warm, solid body pressed against my back. For a disoriented second, I didn't know where I was. Then, it all came rushing back in a tidal wave of sensory memory. The scent of her skin, the taste of her mouth, the sound of my name on her lips. Willow. I was in Willow's bed. A slow, happy smile spread across my face. I lay perfectly still, not wanting to break the spell. Her arm was draped possessively over my waist, her hand resting on my stomach. Her breathing was a slow, even puff of air against the back of my neck. This was what a morning after was supposed to feel like. Not awkward or regretful, but peaceful. Right. I carefully, slowly turned over in her arms to face her. She was even more beautiful in the morning light, her face relaxed in sleep, her dark lashes fanned out against her cheeks. Her lips, still slightly swollen from my own, were parted just a little. I had an overwhelming urge to kiss her, but I resisted. I just wanted to watch her for a minute, to drink in the sight of her, this incredible woman who was, impossibly, here with me. Her eyes fluttered open as if she could feel me watching her. They were hazy with sleep for a moment, then they focused on me, and a slow, lazy smile transformed her face. "Morning," she rasped, her voice thick and low. "Morning," I whispered back, my heart doing a little flip-flop. She tightened her arm around me, pulling me closer until our noses were almost touching. "You're still here." "You told me not to move," I reminded her playfully. Her smile widened. "Good. You're a good listener." She leaned in and gave me a soft, lingering kiss. It was a kiss without heat or demand, a simple kiss of greeting that was somehow more intimate than all the passionate kisses from the night before. It tasted of sleep and contentment. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her thumb stroking my hip bone. "Like I've been asleep for 100 years and just woke up," I said honestly. "Is that good or bad?" "It's the best," I assured her. "What about you?" "I feel—" She paused, searching for the word. "Calm." I knew exactly what she meant. The constant, thrumming energy of my attraction to her, the nervous anxiety that had been my constant companion for months, was gone. In its place was this quiet, steady warmth. It was like coming inside after being caught in a storm. "I could get used to this," I murmured, snuggling closer into her warmth. "I'm counting on it," she said, her voice rumbling against my ear. We lay like that for a long time, tangled in the sheets, bathed in the morning sun, talking in low murmurs. We talked about nothing and everything: her love for old movies, my struggle with my art history degree, the ridiculous regulars at the cafe. It was easy, effortless. Eventually, the smell of coffee began to call to me, a professional hazard. "As much as I never want to leave this bed," I said regretfully, "my body is chemically dependent on caffeine." Willow laughed, the sound bright in the quiet room. "I think I can help with that." She swung her legs out of bed, and I was treated to the breathtaking view of her strong, naked back as she stood and stretched, her muscles flexing. She was completely unself-conscious, moving with a fluid grace that was mesmerizing. She pulled on a pair of gray sweatpants that hung low on her hips and an old faded t-shirt. She was a domestic goddess, my domestic goddess. The thought made me ridiculously happy. "Stay there," she commanded, pointing a finger at me. "I'll bring you coffee in bed. It's the least I can do for the woman who brought me a thank you scone." "Hey, that scone was the catalyst for all of this," I retorted, pulling the sheet up to my chin. It deserves some respect. She just laughed and disappeared into the kitchen. I could hear the sounds of her moving around. The opening of cabinets, the running of water, the familiar, comforting whir of a coffee grinder. It was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. This was it. This was the casual intimacy, the easy comfort I had craved without even knowing it. This was the resolution, not of a story, but of a long and lonely chapter of my life. She returned a few minutes later with 2 steaming mugs. She handed one to me and climbed back into bed, settling against the headboard beside me. I took a sip. It was perfect, rich and dark, just how I liked it. Of course it was. She knew. She had been paying attention too. We drank our coffee in comfortable silence, our shoulders touching. The future wasn't some big, scary unknown anymore. It was here, in this quiet moment. It was in the taste of coffee and the warmth of her body next to mine. I leaned my head on her shoulder, her arm came around me, pulling me into her side. "So," I said, breaking the silence. "No more covering my shifts," she chuckled. "No more covering your shifts. But I can still text you." She turned her head and kissed my hair. "You can text me anytime you want. You can text me from the other room if you want." I smiled into my mug. I just might. The promise of that simple future, of text messages sent from across a room instead of across a city, of shared mornings and easy coffee, stretched out before me, bright and beautiful and real. I had been frustrated, questioning, and completely unaware of how much I was missing. And now, through her, through this connection that had started with a reluctant text message and ended in her bed, I felt whole. I felt awakened. The journey from attraction to this moment, this quiet, sun-drenched fulfillment, had been terrifying and exhilarating. And I wouldn't have changed a single second of it. Because it led me here. It led me home. Have you ever found desire in the most unexpected place? That slow burn that suddenly catches fire and changes everything? It's a terrifying and beautiful thing to let yourself fall into that. To let go of the fear and just reach for what you want. I'd love to hear about it. Tell me in the comments about a time an unexpected attraction completely took you by surprise. What happened? And if you enjoyed our little coffee shop romance, please give this video a like and subscribe for more steamy sapphic stories. We have so many more waiting to be told. You might just be surprised who falls in love next.